Ben Kiraku. I'm joined here by Jamie Boy, and unfortunately, I haven't been around for too much of the stream tonight. I've only just been able to join. Managed to catch the tail end of the last match with Yveltal running riot. More Amoongus, in fact, running riot over the game. Jamie, how's the last few matches been going?
Yeah, we've had some very dominating performances coming out from the winners in these last few games. You saw Yveltal really putting on all that pressure with the Amoongus. Wasn't too many ways to break through with the Kyogre. Saw the Mindshell and Lunala against the opposing Zacian team as well. And then we had that Tornoga mirror that always goes past very quickly as well. So yeah, we're going to be moving on to this match here. It's going to be between the Netherlands and Malaysia.
Yeah, indeed. And two very strong teams. We've actually been having a look at the standings already, and both Malaysia and the Netherlands, I believe, are locked in to make it out of the group stages. Here's the standings on your screen now. So currently Malaysia at the top of the group with the Netherlands in second place. And of course, if the Netherlands do manage to win out this match between these two countries, then they will be taking the top spot in the group. So a little bit of a battle here between these two countries, just trying to vie out for that top spot and maybe make themselves have a little bit of an easier route through the next stage of the tournament in the group stage. So quite an interesting one. Of course, Finland, Czech Republic, unfortunately not able to make it through this stage of the tournament, but I'm sure they will be back for another World Cup later down the line. So yeah, we're going to be going ahead and having a look at where Malaysia and the Netherlands are at the moment. You can see there's only one win at the moment to the Netherlands, so taking the early head start. We'll see if that continues in the game so far. And having a couple of outside picks, so to speak, coming through from both the Netherlands and Malaysia. We have that Calyrex Ice Rider form versus a Duskmane Necrozma, which was very, very much a Pokemon that you saw quite a lot of back in the 2019 seasons, but kind of fallen out of favor with Zacian taking the top spot of the Steel-type legendary Pokemon here. So not sure if we've had a couple of little technical difficulties, so Jamie's just trying to reconnect here. So yeah, we'll just carry on going through to the match here. We'll start to see these players coming out onto the screen. I believe for the Netherlands, we have Andres Escobosa, who's a player that if you're watching and are within the community, will be able to recognize a player that's quite prevalent around the community in live tournaments and certainly some of the online tournaments as well. Top 8 in the Denmark special event in 2017 season, and top 4 in the German national champions of 2016, which is another format that was known for using restricted Pokemon. Coming out with a pretty standard looking Xerneas team here, and that's going to be just trying to go ahead and get that Xerneas boosted with Geomancy. I got lots of fake out potential with Urshifu and Rillaboom. With Incineroar and Rillaboom, should I say, being able to just pivot around and Parting Shot and U-turn about, and of course Rage Powder support potential with both Volcarona and Amoongus. And that Volcarona, though, could be boosting itself with some Quiver Dance, so it is going to be a little bit of a guessing game as to what the matchup looks like for his opponent, and of course which Pokemon may or may not be boosting.
Yeah, it's going to be the same 6 that we saw Paul Reese run in that Invitational that just went for the 25th Invitational as well. So definitely a solid team going to be coming out for Andres. And we can have a look at what his opponent is going to be running here. Aqlif is going to be bringing that Kieran White, a Pokemon we really don't see too often as the restricted of choice. And probably not the best restricted going into the Xerneas matchup, but yeah, definitely a very interesting pick coming out here.
Certainly, and a couple of Premier challenges to his name as well, 2017, 2015, so at least we can see that there's a bit of history there. Malaysia is a country that hasn't got so many live events, so less opportunity for Aqlif unless he was traveling to somewhere like Singapore or Australia to various tournaments, would be able to compete, but I'm sure is going to be able to come out and have a good match here. As you said, Jamie, Kieran White doesn't fare too well against Xerneas, but does have some options there to maybe shut down some of the fake out potential with that Indeedee. And of course, Whimsicott is known for having a few shenanigans up its sleeve.
Yeah, definitely a Pokemon that could help out against the Xerneas matchup as well. It'll be able to ignore any of the Rage Powders that could come out from the Amoonguss and potentially the Volcarona as well if it is carrying that. You can go for a taunt to put a stop to the Geomancies. You can go for an Encore to make sure that the Geomancies keep happening as well. So yeah, definitely going to be maybe a crucial Pokemon going into this match, especially against the Xerneas. You definitely expect that Stack Attacker to come out as well, because Kieran White itself is not the Pokemon you want to be facing down the Xerneas, but it's going to do very well into all of the other Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely. And without further ado, let's go into the match here and see how these players fare. We are going to be seeing it from Andres' perspective here. So we're going to be seeing the Xerneas in all its glory going for those Geomancies. And I think that's going to be quite a bit of a mismatch of a game here. We've got the opportunity for Indeedee. We saw on the previous screen that Aqlif is going to be using that male Indeedee. Male Indeedee does have the opportunity to go for Trick Rooms as well as the Stack Attacker, so as well as the Whimsicott, in fact. So depending on how Aqlif has built his team, there could be a strong Trick Room orientation, but he does have to be worried about the Amoonguss on Andres' side of the field, and of course that Xerneas if it gets going. And really, if the Xerneas is able to be protected from Andres' side by that Amoonguss, Volcarona, the two fake out Pokemon in Incineroar and Rillaboom from the Stack Attacker on Aqlif's side of the field, it's going to be quite a difficult game for Aqlif to get any traction going.
It looks like Aqlif wants to be getting that Trick Room set up straight away with the Stack Attacker leading with the Incineroar, facing down Andres' own Incineroar and the Rapid Strike Urshifu there.
One of the things you seem to tend to find with these sort of team compositions, you saw the Intimidate from Andres' side go first on that turn, followed by Aqlif. So likelihood is that Andres has the faster fake out and will be able to fake out the Incineroar on Aqlif's side of the field. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Stack Attacker, and depending on how Urshifu on Andres' side of the field is trained, and of course how much defensive investment that Stack Attacker has, is going to determine on whether or not that Trick Room is going to be going up. And a real, quite a lot of pressure coming from Andres' side quite early on to stop that Trick Room, to stop that Stack Attacker being in a great position, and to maybe try to be clearing it out before that Xerneas comes in later in the game and just sets up Geomancy and runs away with the match.
We'll have to see if it is going to be able to do that in the future, but it's not going to be switching in for the Incineroar here. It's going to be the Indeedee switching in, going to be that female variety, getting up that Psychic Terrain to put a stop to any of the fake outs that could come out from this Incineroar, and also going to be activating the Psychic Seed on the Indeedee here, going to be raising that special defense. And Incineroar did go for the fake out into that Stack Attacker that is now protected by that Psychic Terrain, but that doesn't stop this Surging Strikes coming off from the Urshifu, also targeting down into the Stack Attacker. Still going to be getting all three of those crits, but it looks like that Stack Attacker is going to be bulky enough to be able to take all three of those hits and respond back with whatever it wants to be going for here, and it is going to be that Trick Room.
Yeah, one of the great things about Surging Strikes is that it crits every time. One of the annoying things about Surging Strikes is that it can't ever crit. And unfortunately, Stack Attacker has been trained to survive that attack very comfortably. Aqlif knows that, and he's been able to play himself into Trick Room in that situation. And the Stack Attacker may have taken some damage, but it only needs to be at 1 HP in order to deal with the Xerneas, and that's really well played there, well positioned for Aqlif to get himself into a good place. Indeedee now threatening for Expanding Force to be doing a lot of damage to the Urshifu, and that's really the only Pokemon on Andres' side of the field that can really quickly deal with the Stack Attacker on Aqlif's.
Was able to do a lot of damage, but now the stack attacker is going to be able to respond with that rock slide. No flinches coming out from the Incineroar, able to get that throat chop into the Indeedee before the Indeedee is going to be firing off that expanding force. Not going to be affecting the Incineroar, but of course going to be doing a lot of damage to that Urshifu and easily able to pick up the KO.
Yeah, a little bit of a maybe missed opportunity there for Andres, but you maybe that throat chop could have knocked out the stack attacker there, and it would have been a little bit of a nicer position. But Amoonguss coming in is going to put a lot of pressure on the field, can go for those spores, likely to be the second fastest thing on the field after the stack attacker on Aqlif's side. But if Aqlif has opted to go for safety goggles on his stack attacker, then there is the option for body presses or just continuing to rock slide and maybe just try to stop that Amoonguss from sporing the Indeedee.
It's going to be the move of choice for body press here into the Incineroar. No rage powders coming out from the Amoonguss, so it doesn't need to worry about that if it was carrying the safety goggles before. But it is just going to be a spore coming out from the Amoonguss into the Indeedee slots at the moment, so we don't get to find out if there is a safety goggles on that stack attacker at the moment. But it has just taken out that Incineroar, and the Indeedee, of course, is going to be taking its first turn of sleep. But with this Xerneas coming in here, it is going to be crucial of what item that stack attacker is carrying.
And also crucial what move of choice that the Amoonguss has to go for. If it is that safety goggles on the stack attacker, then you can't go for Spore. If it's Pollen Puff as the only attacking move on the Amoonguss, which is fairly common in this format, then the Amoonguss is not likely to be able to take out stack attacker with something like Pollen Puff, as opposed to, say, Grass Knot, which would definitely be knocking out the stack attacker with very high base power available to it. So Xerneas just going for a protect and opting on the defensive.
Yeah, you want to be stalling out that Trick Room and not taking any damage from this Gyro Ball that has been fired off into the Xerneas, but that Spore is not going to affect the stack attacker as it is carrying the safety goggles item here. And indeed, he gets to burn a turn of sleep here, so it does have the opportunity to wake up now and start redirecting or just firing off those expanding forces.
Yeah, one of the things you've got to be watching out for here is that stack attacker has already been intimidated once. So Gyro Ball not likely to knock out the Xerneas, definitely not likely to knock out the Amoonguss, as you see Gyro Ball going into that turn. Indeedee waking up, going for an expanding force is going to do lots and lots of damage to that Amoonguss. It is enough to pick up the knockout actually, so it's going to be Xerneas versus the world. And yeah, if there's a Xerneas, there's a way in some way, shape or form here, as that Xerneas does get the Geomancy up. If it does have access to both Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam, it is going to be able to knock out the stack attacker with at least one of those moves. So Trick Room being nearly at its end may inform the last part of the game. There we go, the Trick Room is ending, as that Xerneas has a little bit more free reign to do as it pleases.
Xerneas is probably one of the Pokemon that you want to be 1v4ing the rest of the opponent's team, especially because that stack attacker has been put very low at this point. Definitely going to be in range of the Dazzling Gleam, and we've seen Rock Slide come out from the stack attacker. We've seen all four of its moves at this point. It's gone for the 3 attacks. It's not carrying Wide Guard, so really you just get to click Dazzling Gleam for the rest of the game if you're on Andres' side of the field, and you have the opportunity to go for a Gyro Ball into that Xerneas. You could have gone for, you went for the Gyro Ball into the Amoonguss instead, but opting to not to target the Xerneas, allowing it to get that Geomancy, and switching in the Kyurem now for that stack attacker, which is not going to be liking taking this Dazzling Gleam in the slightest, so just going to be knocked out immediately alongside the Indeedee, but crucially going to be keeping that stack attacker. There is that Incineroar waiting in the back. It looks like Trick Room is going to be set up once again.
Yeah, really actually like that play quite a lot from Aqlif. Definitely the Kyurem not liking is quite a strong understatement, I think, Jamie. But that double knockout does give some opportunity here. The Psychic Terrain has ended alongside the Trick Room. Now the Gyro Ball from Stack Attacker is at full power. The Xerneas has taken some damage, so a Fake Out, a Trick Room, and then just using Gyro Ball will be enough to close out this game for Aqlif. And there's not really that much that Andres can do in this position. And now we see the Trick Room going up with a Fake Out. It's just going to be Gyro Ball for game, unless the Xerneas gets 4 protects in a row and then can survive a Flare Blitz while the Xerneas knocks out the Stack Attacker, but pretty low likelihood of that happening.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a quadruple protect. I've seen my fair share of triple protects in my time, but I don't think I've ever seen the fabled quadruple protect to stall out Trick Room yet. But yeah, that is going to be the only out for Andres at this point. And now it makes a bit more sense why the Gyrable went into the Amoonguss in the few turns before. Could have broken a focus sash on the Amoonguss so that it was guaranteed the knockout with that expanding force. And when you know that you can get into this position where you can just sacrifice the Kyurem and you know you can bring in your Incineroar and your Stack Attacker back to guarantee that Trick Room once again, that does make a lot of sense going back thinking about those turns before, because the Stack Attacker was also intimidated previously, probably wouldn't have been able to pick up the knockout on the Xerneas, but no fabled quadruple protect in this game at least. We'll have to keep on searching for that one. The failed double protect means that Gyrable is going to be picking up the knockout on that Xerneas and taking the first game for Aqlif.
Yeah, it was really nice play at the end there. The way that, as you mentioned, Jamie, those switch ups. It's nice to see a restricted Pokemon that's really good in the matchups that it's good in being used a little bit like cannon fodder for the Xerneas matchup rather than the Pokemon of choice. Stack Attacker taking the so-called restricted slot that game, picking up 2-3 of the knockouts in the match, but really well played, well positioned. Good knowledge there. I think the Indeedee had a few ticks of sleep going on as well in the turn that it woke up before going for that expanding force again. So, a good understanding of timing coming out from Aqlif here, and understanding of how to play the Xerneas matchup, which is very, very important when your restricted Pokemon is so weak to it.
And Stack Attacker is definitely the crucial Pokemon in the Xerneas matchup. And we saw it took damage from the Surging Strikes, was able to survive, and then just wasn't attacked for the rest of the game. If the Amoonguss would have had something like a Grass Knot as a move of choice, that would have been able to pick up the knockout on that Stack Attacker. You wouldn't have even had to worry about safety rolls at that point. You could have gone for the Protect and the Grass Knot. But it seems like the Pollen Puff is the only move of choice for the Amoonguss. That definitely wouldn't have been enough to knock out the Stack Attacker. So yeah, you definitely need to find a better way of breaking through the Stack Attacker on Andres' side of the field. So the Urshifu is definitely the best way to do it, but he lost it on that turn too, and that was way too early.
Yeah, and the difficulty is that Surging Strikes is the only move that you're going to be able to do too much damage with. Close combat can be intimidated because it doesn't crit every time. Now, if it does get the crit, then great, but it doesn't always do that. So, yeah, not so reliable as a form of dealing with it. But a little bit of switch up here. We have Whimsicott and Kyurem on the field coming out for Aqlif, changing out completely from the same lead from Andres, the Incineroar, and that Urshifu.
Yeah, definitely a big change coming out here. You've got the fake outs just on the Incineroar on Andres' side of the field at this point, so you can put a stop to any of the tailwinds that could come out, and then maybe the Urshifu does naturally outspeed the Kyurem. It should be able to get a huge amount of damage into it.
Yeah, it could be, and all of that damage would definitely not go amiss, but I kind of feel like Kyurem isn't the Pokemon that really needs to be dealt with too much by Andres. Is really that Stack Attacker. So if this Urshifu is threatened in any way, like by a Moonblast from Whimsicott in subsequent turns, that could be something that Andres wants to deal with and maybe preserve that Urshifu for later.
I'm also going to be preserving the Whimsicott here, switching out into the Incineroar, so preserving one of the better ways of breaking through that Urshifu at this point. And the fake out is fired off from the Incineroar on Andres' side of the field into the Incineroar that has switched in. And that means that close combat is going to be fired off into the Kyurem, but it is able to survive that attack and will be able to respond with one of its own. So a very crucial survive there. Freeze Dry is the move of choice to knock out this Urshifu. There's no way that after a close combat defense drop, it's going to be able to survive that, as that is going to be that super effective hit. And the Life Orb is the item of choice on the Kyurem, and the close combat did end up doing enough damage that it did knock itself out to its own Life Orb recoil.
Yeah, and now there's nothing really stopping the Stack Attacker on Aqlif's side of the field. Amoonguss coming in from Andre, great Pokemon in the matchups that it's good in, but unfortunately in front of a Stack Attacker with safety goggles and only Pollen Puff to its name, not really going to be doing too much work here. Stack Attacker already shown Body Press, shown Rock Slide, shown Gyro Ball, and of course Trick Room as well. So we know that it's going to be at least threatening to Incineroar. Body Press isn't going to be affected by anything like Intimidate. And of course, the Xerneas is going to get knocked out to a Gyro Ball. So we see here a fake out coming out from that Incineroar, Spore coming out from the Amoonguss onto Aqlif's Incineroar. But the man of the hour, so to speak, the Stack Attacker, is going to be setting up that Trick Room.
You've taken the sleep on the Incineroar, at least at this point, so no Flare Blitz could come out into the Amoonguss, but one of the nice things about the safety goggles on the Stack Attacker is you just completely ignore it. You don't care about it, especially if it's not carrying the Grass Knot either. If it's just Pollen Puff as the move of choice, that's not going to be doing anything to the Stack Attacker. So really, the Stack Attacker has 4 turns to just play a 2v1 at this point. It's just going to ignore the Amoonguss and just target down that Incineroar slot that has turned into a Xerneas here, probably trying to catch that body press into the Incineroar, as you do resist that with the Fairy typing coming out here. But instead, it's going to be a Rock Slide coming out from the Stack Attacker, so still going to be doing a nice little bit of chip damage to both of these Pokemon. I'm going to be flinching that Amoonguss as well, so if it was going for any of the attacks into the opposing Pokemon, that wouldn't have been doing too much. Only really would have stopped any healing coming out from the side Pollen Puff.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe that could come in handy for Andres later in the game. Of course, Xerneas is on low health, then Intimidates play less of a role, and I'm sure Andres is thinking about how to make that Gyro Ball do as little damage as possible, so that maybe he can weave in a cheeky little Geomancy. We know that 2+ Geomancy is one of the most powerful things. 2+ Moonblast from Xerneas is one of the most powerful things in the format, and so if maybe that'll be enough to take out the Stack Attacker with a couple of hits, a couple of opportunities, but there's a lot of work to do by Andres to get into that position yet in the game.
Seems like the first step is get that Intimidate down onto the Stack Attacker, switching out the Amoonguss into the Incineroar, and then the Incineroar on the opposing side of the field for Aqlif is going to be switching out into that Whimsicott as Xerneas goes for a Protect here to protect himself from this Gyro Ball that has fired off into the Xerneas.
A clever play here, because if that Whimsicott has access to Encore, then an Encore and a Gyro Ball can go into the Xerneas slot. Unless the Xerneas switches out and Andres sees that coming, it's really a win-win for Aqlif on this turn. Of course, Aqlif could decide that maybe actually the Incineroar is a little bit more of a threat to stopping him doing exactly what he wants to do. Likelihood that is that when Trick Room is over, the Trick Room can go up again, because that Stack Attacker hasn't been threatened in the slightest so far. But Incineroar leaving the field and Amoonguss coming in.
It seems like Andres is going to be cycling those Intimidates onto the Stack Attacker here, and Encore is on that Whimsicott, so Xerneas will be protecting once again, but it does have to take this Gyro Ball first. We'll have to see if this is going to be enough with the Intimidate, and wow, that is going to be able to pick up the knockout on that Xerneas. Does not care about that Intimidate at all, so if that was a side Pollen Puff when the Amoonguss got flinched, that may have put the Xerneas out of range of that attack, but at that point it wouldn't have mattered. It would have been protecting regardless.
Yeah, and now the Incineroar has to come back in. It's going to be able to get another Intimidate off, which will be helpful for maybe Amoonguss, but it's going to be a long time before that Amoonguss on Andres' side of the field is going to be able to break through that Stack Attacker. And of course, there is another Pokemon in the back for Aqlif. So looks like really in quite commanding fashion, Aqlif is going to be able to take this game for Malaysia. Of course, I didn't mention as well, Body Press doesn't actually take any account of the Intimidate that's been cycled around. So, yeah, even more things on Aqlif's side of the field that he can use to his advantage without any risk of Andres being able to stop him.
Yeah, and you'll be getting that Beast Boost as well from the Gyro Ball knockout, so your Body Presses are going to be doing even more damage, and that Fake Out probably doing 1 damage there. I don't think I can even see the movement of the health bar at all. So, yeah, one of the saddest Fake Outs to ever come out, and it doesn't really matter if the Incineroar comes in with the Spore Switch in. It was already asleep, so it doesn't really matter too much at that point, but there's still really not anything to do here, as the Incineroar is going to wake up on Aqlif's side of the field, going to be flinching that Incineroar, and Pollen Puff is going to be fired off into the Incineroar on Andres' side, going to be healing up a little bit, but you've got that plus defense on the Stack Attacker here. It's going to be doing a lot of damage with that Body Press. It is going to be setting up that Trick Room, so it's going to be outspeeding the Incineroar on Andres' side of the field at this point, and can really just fire off the Body Presses, and we'll have to see if that's going to be strong enough into the Stack Attacker, into the Incineroar to knock it out. But even if it's not, it will just be able to fire off another one. The Incineroar doesn't really have the firepower to break through the Stack Attacker, and Pollen Puff really isn't enough.
No, indeed. And one of the things that you could do, a little bit more of a cheeky play if you're Aqlif, is to start knocking out your own Incineroar. It doesn't actually it doesn't actually matter at all. That body press doing so much to Incineroar is going to outlast the Pollen Puff. But if that body press was doing, say, less than half, maybe get some cheeky defense boost of your own. But parting shot coming out from Incineroar on Aqlif's side of the field. He's just going to be cycling round into that Whimsicott, maybe wanting to encore the Amoonguss here just to keep it doing exactly the same thing, so that Aqlif can just do what he wishes with the stack attacker and take a knockout on the Incineroar. But Flare Blitz coming out into the stack attacker slot. You mentioned a really sad fake out. That's an equally sad Flare Blitz, I think, into the stack attacker.
You can at least try for the burn. Like, the burn would be something. It would even reduce the damage output of the body presses as well. Maybe you'd eventually be able to Flare Blitz through the team as you Pollen Puff yourself, but yeah, we were definitely still going to be seeing that coming from the Amoonguss here. It is going to be an encore fired off into this Amoonguss, but it is actually carrying the Mental Herb, so a little bit more information revealed at that point. Going to be not affected by that encore at all, but doesn't particularly matter at this point, as the body press is going to be fired off once again into the Incineroar, able to pick up the knockout this time, and now it's just Amoonguss against the world.
Indeed, and Amoonguss with a move like Pollen Puff is not going to be doing too much. In fact, doing nearly as much as the Flare Blitz did. That is incredible. That Amoonguss, I'm going to call that the MVP of the game, because it's trying really hard. Fair play to that Amoonguss, I say. But yeah, that's going to be the forfeit locked in. You can see on your screen there, Andres is going to take the loss here, and Aqlif is your winner 2-0 in this match.
Yeah, so Kyurem ending up trumping over the Xerneas there, but really was just a sacrificial lamb in both games. Just the switch in on the +2 Dazzling Gleam, but crucially able to knock out the Urshifu in that game too. And really, the Urshifu was the only real way of breaking through that stack attacker, with safety goggles just completely ignoring the Amoonguss, with no Grass Knot on the Amoonguss either to be able to hit it. That meant Urshifu was the only real answer to that stack attacker, and it got knocked out in turn 2 of game 1 and turn 1 of game 2. So yeah, losing the main answer to a Pokemon early when it just completely walls the rest of your team really gave Andres no way back into those games.
No, definitely not. And, in some compositions, some matchups, you play maybe a Volcarona against a stack attacker. Not all of them carry Rock Slide, so there can be a little bit of a hole there. Volcarona's good special attacker. It can boost up. It's not too frail, or at least you can train it not to be frail. And it gives a little bit of an opportunity there. But with the way that Aqlif had built his stack attacker with those free attacks and Trick Room, dropping what is more commonly Wide Guard or Protect, just made sure that Urshifu was the only thing that was really important in the matchup. And I really want to shout out to the Kyurem White as well for being able to live that close combat. As you mentioned earlier, Jamie, wouldn't be surprised if there was some training there just to make sure that matchup was as firm as it could be.
Yeah, being able to survive. If it would have been knocked out there, you get to keep the Urshifu, and that would have been the main answer. And yeah, just losing that on that turn 1 effectively sealed it just past that turn 1, as stack attacker was completely freed up at that point. So yeah, another dominating performance coming out for this stream. We've seen some very strong performances coming out with lots of 2-0s coming into these games. So we're going to jump into a short break, and we'll be back once again with the final game of today.